So I don't know if everyone has seen this, but Lex Fridman, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He has a podcast. He actually just interviewed Joe Rogan. And there was something that came up during that interview about Donald Trump. And Joe Rogan pretty much sets the record straight here. So I think you guys would be interested in hearing about this. Anna Kasparian did talk about this, and I think she could have given Joe Rogan a little bit more credit here where credit's due, but she has her doubts. So let's go ahead and get into that.
By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not helping him.
Yes, that was Joe Rogan.
Okay, so that's something I was not aware of until I saw this segment. I didn't know that Joe Rogan has had the opportunity to have Donald Trump on his podcast. Was not aware of that, so that was new to me. And apparently Joe Rogan said no. And that's interesting because I've seen Joe Rogan interview all kinds of people, but it seems like when it comes to someone like Donald Trump, that is where Joe Rogan is going to draw the line. Obviously, you just heard him say there, he is not a Trump supporter. And I'm glad that he said that because this kind of thing has been going around for the past couple of months that Joe Rogan is a secret right winger. And I told you guys I don't believe that. Also, that Joe Rogan's pro like Trump or whatever. I know Joe Rogan did come out and say that he would support someone like Ron DeSantis. But I think that, you know, this may has been stretched a little bit too far. I do want to remind everyone that Joe Rogan did endorse Bernie Sanders in 2020, and he did believe a lot of the policies that Bernie Sanders was running on as well. So let's hear what Anna has to say about this, though, because I don't think she's really buying it.
Feeling that he has actually turned down Donald Trump as a guest on his podcast multiple times. He was being interviewed by host Lex Fridman, who pushed back, saying that he thinks Rogan would actually, be suited to have Trump on, will likely have Trump on in the future. Rogan's explanation for why he won't is telling, though. And so I want you to pay close attention to what he's saying here, because he reveals that he understands the power of his platform and the responsibility that comes along with it.
Think I'll have him on?
I think you'll have him on.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
I mean, you've had a lot of people that I think you may otherwise be skeptical. Would I have a good conversation? Which I think is your metric. You don't care about politics, so can I have a good conversation? And I think you had like people like Kanye on, for example, and you had a great conversation with him.
Yeah, but Kanye.
Yeah, but that's not a good comparison. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't compare Kanye West to Donald Trump. I wouldn't make that comparison. I'm sorry. One's an entertainer. The other one was president of the United States. So I don't know.
He's an artist. But Kanye doing well or not doing well doesn't change the course of our country.
Yeah, but do you really bear the responsibility of the course of our country based on a conversation?
I think you can revitalize and rehabilitate someone's image in a way that is pretty shocking.
So let's just stop there for a second, John, because Rogan has had all sorts of people on his podcast who have promoted or said all sorts of incredibly irresponsible and even dangerous things on his podcast.
Yep.
But it is interesting that for Rogan, Trump is his red line.
Yeah, look, I wish I could say I knew more about who he's had on in the past. Like, if you had told me he'd had Trump on in the past, I would not be surprised about it. I'm just as unsurprised that he hasn't. I really don't care who he has on his show. It strikes me as.
I really don't care who he has on his show, but I'm gonna complain about who he has on the show. He says he doesn't care, but TYT multiple times has complained about who Joe Rogan has brought on his show. So that's really interesting.
Does he often have politicians on his show? Any politicians, like national figures?
Yeah, he's had politicians.
He does?
Yeah, I mean, when she was a politician, Tulsi Gabbard was on. He had Bernie Sanders on. Okay. I'm sure there are other politicians, but I'm not remembering it.
Okay, yeah, look, I think, again, he approaches like 50% of like a well thought out point. He understands that bringing someone on his platform would help them by promoting them. And he understands that having a serious conversation with them and treating them as a serious person, bringing them on does help to rehabilitate their image. Of course, at the same time, he's helped to, by his own words, rehabilitate the image of people who are arguably as bad as Trump, who might not be politicians, like literally elected politicians or those who are presumably gonna run for office in the future, but are definitely political actors. Alex Jones doesn't mainly do movie reviews. So look, again, maybe he's not thinking about this. Maybe there's gaps in his thinking. I find that pretty easy to imagine. Maybe he's being disingenuous. To be fair to him, he hasn't had Trump on, and I have no doubt that if he wanted to have Trump on, he could. So I'll give him that credit.
Right. So look, I didn't want to talk about this to either give him credit or not give him credit. I think that it's an interesting conversation because this is the first time that he has acknowledged that he has a lot of power with this massive platform that he's built. And I think that's relevant given what he got a lot of criticism for during the pandemic, which was the promotion.
Sorry guys, I gotta skip this part. YouTube doesn't like this. I know what they're about to get into. But to the point that I think she's trying to make here is that I guess he didn't seem to have that concern when he brought on people, doctors, to talk about, I guess, an alternative opinion about, the jab and things like that. Like, I honestly didn't have a problem with that. I think you need to hear from other voices. I think it's dangerous for us to sit back and just go along with the establishment narrative. I mean, haven't we done this before? Haven't we learned this from the past? So I thought that was ridiculous. I didn't think it was fair that people wanted to censor him or ban him from Spotify because he brought on people that had a difference of opinion. To me, that was just censorship. So my whole thing is like, I don't agree with Anna here. I think he can bring on whoever he wants to bring on his show. And here's the thing, you don't have to watch it. That's how I feel about it. Oh, that's a bad place to pause this. I am so sorry. Whoops. Let's go back in.
Hey guy, I'm a podcaster and I do comedy. Like, you shouldn't be taking medical advice from me.
Then why do you constantly have on people who talk about medicine and public?
But the medical advice, no. There's a difference between bringing on a medical professional to talk about medical advice and you yourself just trying to do it on your own. They're leaving that part out. Like, Joe Rogan did bring on doctors to talk about it. They're acting like he just came up with this theory and everything on his own. That's not the case. So I'm sorry, but he was letting people know what the doctors were saying. So no, I'm sorry, Anna. That doesn't work on me.
Health crises.
So let's talk about that real quick because, he has all sorts of people on who, of course, push the vaccine skepticism. You've got Robert Malone, you've got Brett Weinstein.
But that's a doctor. I gotta skip this part a little bit. Sorry. Again, I told you, I know what YouTube's gonna say. That's a medical doctor. It's not like Robert was just some friend of his that lives next door. I mean, come on. Like, this is why I don't like TYT. This is why I don't like TYT. I don't like it. They want the narrative to be only them. That's the thing. And they're pretty much MSNBC light.
About how his show can really rehabilitate someone's reputation. He then proceeded to rehabilitate the reputation of someone that you actually mentioned. John, let's take a look.
Look at the way people look at Alex Jones now, because Alex Jones has been on my podcast a few times.
Yeah, which direction?
The people that have watched those podcasts think he's hilarious. And they think that he definitely f***ed up with that whole Sandy Hook thing. But he's right more than he's wrong. And he's not an evil guy. He's had some serious bouts of alcoholism, some serious bouts of, substance abuse, and they've contributed to some very poor thinking. And if you know him on podcasts, you realize like he is genuinely trying to unearth some things that are genuinely disturbing for most people.
The Posner family had to move 7 times because of Alex Jones's lies about Sandy Hook being a false flag operation. Their son was gunned down in that mass shooting.
But, and I get that, but how is that Joe Rogan's fault? Do you guys see what I mean? Like, why is that his fault though? It's not. So again, I feel like they're contradicting themselves. They say they don't care who he has on the show, but you're complaining about people he's had on the show. So which is it?
Yeah.
Their son is dead. And to add insult to injury, Alex Jones lied about them, called them crisis actors, and then his lunatic audience proceeded to threaten the lives of the parents who lost their son.
Well, that's true, but he only,
But
to be
it's
fair,
alcoholism.
he only did that
It's
for many
alcoholism.
years.
Many years.
And in the words of Joe Rogan, but what do you mean? But what? Like, is it possible that a broadcaster can do? Let's pretend that that's the only bad thing that Alex Jones has done. Is it possible that maybe that one bad thing is too bad? That at that point you can't rehabilitate him, and it isn't. He thinks that every other shooting, up to and including the shootings of this week, were false flags. He still tells his audience that they're false flags. He still tells them that politicians are literally inhabited by Satan. Like this week, if you just took what he said in his show this week, it would be enough that you should write this person off. But no, he's just funny. He's not actively trying to destroy people's lives and inculcate xenophobia and racism and bigotry and anti-Semitism and all that. And like, I cannot imagine that Joe Rogan does not know this.
Joe Rogan's.
So again, does that mean that he's not supposed to talk to him? Is that really what they're saying, that you shouldn't talk to that person? I, for one, believe in restorative justice, right? I think that people can have restorative justice, that they can change. Now, I don't know Alex Jones. I actually never watched him, to be honest. I heard a lot about him, but I never watched him. So for me, I'm just kind of like, maybe he did change. I don't know. Either way, if he wants to talk to him, I think he has that right. Just, I don't know. It just, I think they just like to take jabs at Joe Rogan. I feel like no matter what he does, they're still going to criticize him regardless. Like he just told you at the very beginning that he does not support Trump, and that's the one person that he would not bring on. But they still have to find something. They still have to find something to go after him about. This is what they do.
Unwavering loyalty to Alex Jones blows my mind. It really does, especially since listen, there are plenty of people in this country who are struggling with addiction issues, alcoholism. They don't go around directing hatred and death threats toward people whose children were slaughtered in a mass shooting. Just saying. I could be, maybe I'm being a little unhinged here by mentioning that, directing violence toward people whose children were slaughtered is unacceptable under any circumstance, even if someone is struggling with alcoholism. So rehabilitating Alex Jones's reputation, not here for it. But the other thing I want to just quickly mention is, look.
So Anna just let you know she's not for rehabilitation, only for certain people.
Joe Rogan will turn on his own beliefs, his well-established, talked about beliefs on his podcast to defend Alex Jones. He caught feelings when I called Alex Jones a fat F. He caught feelings over that.
Really?
He did. And I asked him about it. I was like, you don't think fat shaming is even a thing. You think fat shaming is totally fine. But for some reason, when I called Alex Jones that, which by the way, he is, let's call a spade a spade.
That's hitting below the belt. That's hitting below. Look, I have criticism for people, but one thing I don't do, I don't go after, I don't body shame people. Regardless if I agree with someone or not, you won't hear me call them, oh, you're a fat fuck, which apparently she did. I think that's low. Interesting.
He caught feelings because you can fat shame everyone else, but don't fat shame his buddy Alex Jones. Okay.
Well, nobody would want their friend to be fat shamed. Do you want someone to call your friend a fat fuck? No. This is Anna Kasparian not taking responsibility. She doesn't want to apologize for the comment that she made. So she's putting it all on Joe Rogan. John should have pushed back here. John should have pushed back and said, you know what, Anna, that wasn't cool. That's hitting below the belt.
Anyway, listen, he understands the power he has with this platform, yet he is super irresponsible with it on a regular basis now. He's decided to surround himself with all sorts of right-wing lunatics and conspiracy theorists. But the other thing I want to just quickly mention is that he could actually use his platform. He can interview whoever he wants. I don't have.
Why do you care who he hangs out with? I don't understand that. Why do you care? So I want to say something very quick here. Joe Rogan is not a political commentator. Joe Rogan will say that himself. He's not it's not like this show. It's not like Heartland's Media. Like, he's not a political commentator. It is a podcast where he brings on all different type of people to have discussions. And I think the reason why some people tend to think that is because he has had some politicians on his show, and maybe because he endorsed Bernie Sanders for 2020, but it's not a political show. That being said, if he has on someone from the left or someone from the right, why does that even matter? I don't understand. I don't understand what the issue is here, Anna. He just told you he would draw the line with Donald Trump, and you're still upset. You're still angry with Joe. It's really weird. Like, I've never seen, I don't get it. I just feel like he lives in so many people's heads. Like, I really do. They probably wake up every morning thinking about, I wonder who Joe Rogan's hanging out with. They go to bed thinking like, oh, who's Joe Rogan talking to? Who's Joe Rogan got on the show now? Who the fuck cares? It's his show. He can bring on whoever the fuck he wants. I
have a problem with that. Interview whoever you want. But if you're gonna interview someone who's a controversial figure, just know what you're talking about and just be informed enough to challenge what they're saying when they're BSing your audience.
Yeah.
So like a good example of him handling a guest perfectly was Dave Rubin. He had Dave.
If that isn't the pot calling the kettle black, did you do the same thing when you interviewed Madeleine Albright? You took pictures with her, Anna. You were cheesing hard in that photo. Did you think about the responsibility to your audience when you did that? Just a question. Just a question.
Rubin on. Dave Rubin made a fool out of himself because Rogan was informed enough to counter Dave Rubin's idiocy when it came to, the US Postal Service, when it came to building code regulations. And it was great to see because he dismantled Dave Rubin's idiotic arguments in real time. Loved to see it. It was interesting.
They love to talk about Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin left TYT years ago, and they love to talk about this dude. I don't even know people that watch Dave Rubin. I really don't. I'm sure a lot of people probably do, but I don't know anyone that watches Dave Rubin. And I hate to say it, as much as you guys dislike Dave Rubin, TYT, you bringing his name up all the time is actually giving him more attention. Some people might move on and forget about him, but they can't because you keep bringing him up. So there's that. I mean, it's really weird to me. Their obsession with Dave Rubin and Joe Rogan.
So he can interview whoever he wants. The problem that I have is that he seems to allow his loyalty for some of the worst people in this country to cloud his better judgment. And I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, it's annoying. Again, I would love to, first of all, let me be clear, to never hear about him again in my life. But more importantly, if he just wants to have a chat show where he smokes weed and he talks to people, and clearly he just wants to hear something interesting. That's what he wants. He wants to have on a brain scientist or an MMA guy or whatever, and he wants to hear something interesting. He's not interested in knowing enough about it to know if this is a reputable person, if this is a serious person, if it is.
Aha. And that's the problem. They want Joe Rogan to talk to people that are reputable and people that are serious. And this is a big problem in independent media. You already get enough of that for mainstream media, but independent media, you have that too. There are some shows that will only talk to people that have written books, that are elite academic, that are a celebrity, that are politicians, that are candidates. They will only talk to those people. And so John is kind of saying the quiet part out loud here. Those aren't the people that they think that he should be talking to. That's right. That's right, Beffer. Never the working class. You're right.
Responsible to expose my audience to this person. And I doubt he cares. I doubt even if he had the capacity to be prepared for all of his interviews, he wouldn't want to, because his goal is not to learn and better understand all of these topics. It's to hear something cool. And then
expose my audience to this person. How dare you expose your audience to people that have a different opinion? How dare you expose your audience to people that don't have a powerful reputation? How dare you expose your audience to people that are not popular? How dare you expose your audience to people of a certain class? Oh, let's just call it all out. How dare you do that, Joe? That's the problem. You look at networks like TYT, they talk about working class rights. They tell you we should support working class people, but then they only want to talk to certain people. Anybody ever notice this? Only want to talk to certain people. I would really like to see TYT bring Rome, my comrade from RBN, on their show, so he can talk to their audience about Tour for the Poor and how he travels across the country feeding and clothing homeless people. Won't see that though. How dare you expose your audience to those types of people? Classist much.
And largely forget about it and move on with his life. He's not coming out of all these conversations with a dramatically changed worldview. He'll talk to someone a month later who tells him the exact opposite thing, and that'll be cool and interesting. And all of that is fine. And if everybody who was a fan of him just accepted that that's what they were getting, I would be fine with it. The thing that bothers me is when people think that their fandom means something that it doesn't. If you're a fan of Joe Rogan, that's fine. If you're a fan of Jordan Peterson, that's fine. But what you're a fan of is not curiosity and intellectual rigor, and that's not
intellectual rigor. Let it all out, John. Let us know how you really feel. Ashura just said it in the chat. Yep, Sabby, the elitist managerial class. That's what it's all about. It's very interesting.
What you want, that's branding. That's all that is. They have branded these people as being for guys who are more curious and interested in the world. No, guys that are curious and interested in the world can go to the goddamn library and they can read a book about basically anything if they want to. They can talk to these people. You are specifically going to a person who's going to give you a really chopped down, easy to understand version of this. It's not really going to challenge anything that you are.
What's wrong with an easy to understand version? You guys know, working in education, one of the things that you have to do sometimes, and if you're a teacher in the chat, you know this, one of the things you have to do sometimes is that you have to change your lesson. You have to change your style of teaching if the students in the class aren't understanding what you're teaching. I don't like the phrase dumb it down. I prefer you have to make it easier to understand. If you have a student or students in your class that are struggling to understand the lesson, you don't give up on them, or you shouldn't. Some do. You don't give up on them. You tweak your lesson, you tweak your style of teaching, and you make it easier for them to understand it in a way that they can understand it. What's wrong with that, John? What's wrong with him bringing on people that talk about things in that way? This is the problem. This is the class issue. This is what I keep telling you guys about. Oh, you're only supposed to talk to people, certain types of people. How are you going to say that? In all those years, you were telling people support Bernie Sanders because he's for the working class. Yeah, but are you?
Already believe, and all of that is fine. Just be honest with yourself about it.
Yeah. Well, they won't be. So looking forward to whatever comes in 2024 during that election process. It's going to be great. Don't worry, Gavin Newsom, who has destroyed California.
That's pretty much the end of that segment. Yeah, I just... the way I don't understand why you just couldn't take the win there. When he said he didn't want to bring Trump on, he doesn't want to give him more attention, and he said he's not a Trump supporter. Why couldn't you take that as a win? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, you guys. I'm at a loss for words. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Not everyone is anti-capitalist in our nation, so the left can attract the uninitiated to our side on simply critiquing capitalism on common sense economic ground and not leftist doctrine terminology. I know, I wish we could just unite everybody over class, man. I really do. Thank you for the super chat, CB Jamrock. Welcome to Jamrock. That's my song. Chunk Yogurt. Oh, man. Why, CB? That's not nice. Thank you for the super chat, Harry. Anna herself platform mass murderer Albright. Exactly. Hello. Thank you for the super chat. Oh, but Harry, it's okay when it's warmongers. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. There's too much he, she, they are not leftist enough infighting in my estimation. That's a good point. And thank you for the super chat, Trone Dean. Good job. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trone. Thanks for the super chat, Steve. Joe has stated that he thinks Tulsi would make the best president. Enough said.